Cole Palmer has just publicly embarrassed Pep Guardiola. That might have been the best game we've seen all season. Pep Guardiola got this so incredibly wrong and he paid the price. To be honest, I think Chelsea should have won this game. Are Chelsea way better than we all think they are? Welcome back to the first 45. I have just experienced possibly one of the best games of the season. Actually, let me revise that. The best game of the season so far, an 8-goal classic at Stamford Bridge as Chelsea went toe-to-toe with the treble winners. Allow Cole Palmer to reintroduce himself. This kid put his name on the map after the disrespect from Pep. Pep earlier on in the week in the press conferences saying that, you know, once Riyad Mahrez left, Cole was going to get his chance, and he made his impact in a Manchester City shirt this season, scoring in the Charity Shield, scoring in the Super Cup, but he was let go for £45 million to Chelsea. He was adamant he wanted to leave and make an impact somewhere else, and he has done exactly that versus his former club. In the final minutes of the game, Cole Palmer steps up at the penalty spot and slots one home to level it versus Manchester City, and Chelsea snatch a point in what was an excellent game. Usually in this podcast, we break down the tactics and the strategies used by both managers, but to analyze the tactics of this game would do a disservice to the emotion, intensity, and drama of what the Premier League has just dished up this evening. We need to start putting respect on Pochettino's name versus Liverpool at home, Arsenal at home, City at home, and Spurs away. He has not lost a game. Chelsea do not look particularly good against some of the clubs below them, but when they come up against the big boys, the teams that they should be challenging, Chelsea turn into a whole different team. And for 90 minutes, they chased Manchester City off of the park. Now, this might all seem retrospectively a little over the top. They've only came away with a point. They've conceded 4 goals. But what we saw at Stamford Bridge was the identity of a Mauricio Pochettino side, with pressing from the front, intensity in the tackle, high-flying, attacking football. And if they could have just put away some of those chances in the first half, if Malo Gusto could have scored that golden opportunity midway through the second half, we might just be talking about Chelsea getting all 3 points versus Manchester City. This was an excellent game. I need to calm down, but let's just run through what the hell we've just seen in this game. What did you see last night? Let's break it down because we've got 8 goals to go through. I don't think we're going to go through them all. But, you know, I wasn't planning on doing this podcast on this game. You know, last season, it was Chelsea versus Man City. I think we got that game 4 times. I think they played each other in the FA Cup, the Carabao Cup, and the Premier League, obviously, twice. And it's just based off of the sort of trauma that I felt from watching those games with Manchester City sweeping Chelsea off of the park every single time. I was not expecting this game to be any different, and I was actually going to talk about the Wolves-Tottenham game, but after what we've just seen this evening, I simply have to talk about this game. And the Chelsea that we saw last season getting swept off the park by the eventual treble winners is not the same Chelsea, and we all need to realise this. They've had some poor performances during this season, and they should not be swept under the rug. They should be closely analysed and why things have gone wrong for them at times this season. But at the same time as we're doing that, we need to understand, well, why is Pochettino getting such positive results early on in his Chelsea career against such big opposition like the 2 clubs leading the Premier Premier League currently, Manchester City and Liverpool, and Arsenal will throw them in there, of course. Let me break this down. I need a glass of water. I need to calm down. From minute one, Chelsea were pressing really efficiently. I thought that actually Reece James was winning that battle versus Doku. I think he won it that entire first half. But on the other wing, we had the likes of Foden winning the battle up against Cucurella. Now, we're going to speak about Cucurella a little bit later on because, boy, is he a little bastard to play against. I get annoyed just watching him, let alone having to go up against him. But Chelsea looked so comfortable in their shape. They looked well organised. They looked like they knew the game plan. And they were catching Manchester City in the transition a lot in that first half. And Manchester City were cut open several times throughout that first half, as I don't think they particularly had the defensive rigidity to sustain attacks. And they were, like I said, getting caught in that transition very often with 2v3s at the back, 3v3s at the back. And we've got Jackson here, who eventually got his goal. I think it was the 4th of the game, I believe, or maybe the 6th actually. And but in that first half, I think he was quite poor and actually led to Chelsea not picking up more goals in that first half. He's young, he's in a new league, so we should refrain from criticising him too much. And his beginning of his Chelsea career, it's been quite a positive one with some howlers sprinkled in there, as you're going to get with any new young talent coming to the league. But obviously coming off the back of a hat-trick, I was expecting him to pick up his performances again this weekend. But I just think he lacked the composure in those final moments to release the ball at the right time, to slip in that player that was free. And it ended up breaking a lot of those counterattacks down because he would just sort of run into a crowd at times. And like I said, Chelsea could have gone, several goals up if it wasn't for a little bit of composure from the likes of Jackson and maybe a couple other players. But I specifically saw it from the striker. And I think once Chelsea... It will either be Jackson finds his scoring boots, finds that composure. They will have that number 9 sorted. But if not, they need to find someone that can play centrally and have that composure. And they had an answer to that in the end with Cole Palmer. But let's wait until we talk about Cole Palmer. We headed into the break 2-2. Chelsea coming from behind with a very dubious penalty from Haaland and Cucurella, sort of clashing at the back post early on in the game. And I thought that penalty was, for me, very unjust. I think if you start giving those penalties, you're opening up a lot of... you're just opening up a Pandora's box, because those sort of challenges, those sort of collisions and physical battles happen throughout games constantly. So if you're giving that a penalty, then you better prepare to give a lot of other penalties in a lot of other games. Haaland, obviously, as he always does, slots away the penalty past Sanchez, puts Manchester City up. Little did he know that someone would be scoring from the exact same spot almost 90 minutes later. But Chelsea came from behind. Sterling came back to haunt Manchester City with the goal to go up. Obviously, Thiago Silva got the equaliser with a header from the corner, and Chelsea found themselves 2-1 up. And I thought they were not cruising, but they had the momentum, they had the pressure. Stamford Bridge was beginning to lift and get behind their team, and I thought they were comfortably in the game. Not comfortable, because very, very few teams are ever comfortable versus Manchester City. They pose that much of a threat, but they were comfortably in the game and very, very competitive. And obviously then Manchester City got their equaliser, for me undeserved, but the goal was brilliant. Kanji free in the box, a bit of a shocker from Reece James, who I thought had an excellent first half, but sort of switched off at that front post, allowed Akanji to get free, and he had a completely free header to nod it past Sanchez into that far left-hand corner. And we went into the break 2-2, and it was already shaping up to be an excellent game. But in the second half, we basically got a repeat. Goals, goals galore. Manchester City going up a goal both times with Haaland sort of lunging across from Alvarez, a beautifully worked goal that was sort of eerily reminiscent of the Arsenal City game at the Etihad last season, with Haaland coming deep, because obviously Chelsea had such a press on the back line of Manchester City, trying to disrupt that build-up play. It allowed for Haaland to sort of drag Caicedo out, held up the ball lovely. Caicedo was sort of weak in the challenge, sprayed it out wide to, I think, Foden. Foden saw the overlap of Alvarez into the box, and Haaland lunges in and just about gets it over the line. Not a tidy finish, but he'll take those. Obviously, then Chelsea equalised. I think that was the goal from Jackson. A good finish. He's on that goal scoring run. I still think he needs to improve certain aspects of his game for sure, but gets his goal. And then it looked like we were sort of cruising to a 3-3 game, with the game sort of just slowly dying down. A few moments from Malo Gusto, who should have put Chelsea 4-3 up. It was a golden opportunity. Found himself free on the right hand side of the box and just tried to find that far corner, but sort of blazed it over the bar. Again, lacking that goal-scoring composure that very few in that Chelsea team seem to have at the minute. Should have gone 4-3 up. And then at the other end, Rodri comes in clutch. We all thought Manchester City were going to snatch 3 points from where they looked like they deserved 0. Rodri with a huge deflection of Thiago Silva. But for me, it sort of gave me, flashbacks to the Champions League final. Rodri coming up clutch, a long-range effort from outside the box. But this time he gets a huge deflection, really unlucky from Thiago Silva. I thought Chelsea, they won't feel unlucky because of the performance they put in. And I don't think they should come away from this game feeling that way. It should be more of are proud and happy with their performance. But if you look in the final details of some of the decisions, the overall sort of swing of the game, and then, like we said, the deflections, they will feel slightly unlucky. Thiago Silva gets the ball deflected off him, nestles into the net, and Rodri with a beautiful knee slide. I think we need to put him up there with one of the best knee sliders in the league, because it was beautiful. Stood up at the exact right time, celebrated with the Manchester City faithful, and it looked like they'd snatched the 3 points. Jack Grealish looked, overwhelmingly happy. I think that he's probably having a little bit of a difficult time with the competition of Doku. Obviously, you need that competition, but it does feel like in certain games Pep is beginning to prefer Doku when with that direct pace and agility with the ball at his feet. But Grealish adds a little bit of tempo and control to games, and I think once he did come on for Doku, City definitely had a lot more control, and Chelsea weren't able to create those transitional moments as easy. And you might think, well, that's due to their shape, and it is down to that. But I think the likes of Jack Grealish, get him on the ball, allows for the game to not become a little bit like a basketball match, which it sort of turned into at times in that first half. So Jack Grealish looked ecstatic with Rodri sort of bailing City out of what we thought was going to be a draw. 4-3 up in the dying embers of the game. We're into stoppage time now, 8 minutes of added time. Broja comes on. He's had an injury-ridden career since he's joined Chelsea, but it ended up being an excellent substitution from Mauricio Pochettino, sort of just deciding, well, we're losing, we may as well, throw everything at it. Let's go down fighting. If we concede, we concede. We're already losing. And Broja, who's still incredibly young, it feels like he's been at the club or just been in and around the league for such a long time. So Broja receives a pass in the box, and Ruben Diaz so uncharacteristically makes a wild challenge, swipes at Broja, and it was sort of brought on from the player. He sort of stutters as he goes to take the chance, giving that composure that Chelsea did miss in not snatching at chances, just hesitates a split second. Ruben Diaz does not judge the movement, swipes down the player, and it's a penalty to Chelsea. And just when we thought we'd had enough drama, it looked like it was going to be all on Cole Palmer's shoulders to send the game level in the dying embers of the game. And Cole Palmer, who had already made a huge impact on Manchester City's season this year, scoring in the Super Cup, scoring in the Community Shield, we're looking like he could finally make that impact at Manchester City, something that we've seen that he's capable of doing in the Euros and the small glimpses we've seen of him at City. But he's, now in a Chelsea shirt, he has the opportunity to send the game level, and that's exactly what he does. He's got such calmness in those moments to take a penalty in those moments, injury time against your old club in front of your fans. That's huge pressure for a player of his age and a player of his experience. But he's so cool, calm, and collected from the spot. He just a slightly higher finish than Edison can dive. And he drew the game at level 4-4 and just gave it a little one of these, a little shrug of the shoulders to the Chelsea fans, almost to say, yeah, that is exactly what I have to offer. And Pep Guardiola looked, angry and frustrated, and he should be, because that would not have been the game that he prepared for during the week. That end-to-end game, the intensity that Chelsea brought to the game, City were not able to settle into a rhythm and strangle Chelsea, which is clearly what they want to do in these type of games, suck the life out of these clubs so that they can slowly break them down and Haaland can rack up hat-tricks. They weren't able to stamp themselves on the game. They had their moments. I think a draw was deserved, but in terms of the swing and the momentum of the game, Pep Guardiola will be incredibly frustrated with how the entire 98 minutes went. And it was an excellent game, incredible drama to end the weekend of football. I think we've still got one more game left, but I'm recording this before that one, but instead we're just going to focus on some of the football that's already happened this weekend, because it's been an excellent weekend of football, topped off by that game at Stamford Bridge. But like I said, we're not going to break down the tactics and the structures and the shapes of this game, because it's simply this game doesn't allow for it. Though that's the manager's job, be the calm in the storm to tactically adjust. But not the fans, not the people watching these games. This is the sort of game that you just need to accept the emotion and the drama of it all and appreciate it for what it is. Before we move on, though, I do want to talk quickly about Mauricio Pochettino and give him his flowers, because he has a very difficult job at Chelsea, which is a strange thing to say, being a Chelsea manager with all of the luxuries that come with it and the money and the transfer budget and all of those things. But he came into a very dysfunctional changing room, a lot of young talent, lots of players being brought in on big wages, with big money. It is a difficult job, coming off the back of an awful season last year. And I think, it's not gone well at points, and there needs to be improvements. We think back to the loss away at West Ham, that loss against Brentford. They seem to not do very well against, lower opposition London clubs, apparently. But these games versus the big boys, versus the top six, we have to remember he faced a Liverpool at the start of the season that were raring to go and show what they were about, straight off of the bat as soon as a ball was kicked this season, and got a draw. He faced a Spurs side that were looking to go at the top of the table, a Spurs side that were flying, that were unbeaten. He faced a Manchester City side that are at the top of the table, only looking better and better, and still reaching the levels of their treble winning performances. He faced an Arsenal side that were looking to get revenge on Manchester City, stamp their authority in the league. All of these teams, when he goes up against them, they're not coming off the back of poor form, or it might be a Tottenham side that isn't quite clicking as of yet. He's coming up against these teams when they're in at their best. They're in a rhythm, a flow, and they're looking to prove something. And he's not allowing these teams to stamp their authority on games and to treat Chelsea like they've treated Chelsea in the past, as sort of an easier 3 points, a team that they can bully, a team that they can outclass. He's giving Chelsea that bite back a little bit, and giving them back their intensity, which Chelsea need, especially at home under the bright lights of Stamford Bridge. That is the sort of Chelsea performance that is sort of woven into the DNA of the blue side of Chelsea, of London. It should be a testament to Pochettino and how he can sort of put his arm around a lot of young players. He's benching Mudryk, but giving him good amount of minutes to show himself, show his ability, putting faith in Gallagher, who's sort of been questioned here and there. Is he just this sort of just like a deer in the headlights bulldog that just looks good because he runs around? Giving him an opportunity, him being a real focal point in that midfield, putting faith back in Enzo and back in Caicedo when he had a difficult start to the season, and then obviously still playing to the strengths of Reece James, who had an excellent first half, and obviously Cucurella as well, who again has been doubted since he's joined Chelsea. I think he's sort of been forced to play Cucurella, obviously with Ben Chilwell, being hit and miss a lot of the time in terms of injury wise. But just backing these players, putting an arm around them, giving them opportunities, and now they seem to be clicking and finding their rhythm. I don't think that they're going to be, of course, title contenders. I think that if they continue to struggle against lower opposition, they'll struggle to be Champions League contenders as well. But they need to continue this momentum, and I think they'll be a serious threat on the top 6 at least. And I think it's only up from here for Chelsea, and I think a lot of credit has to go to Pochettino. And I think we're all starting to realise, slowly, and more people will start to realise that this is the same Pochettino that we saw at Spurs, and has elements of that young Pochettino that we saw at Southampton. But I'm going to move on. A great game, but we've got lots to talk about for this weekend of football. I hope you stuck around. If you're thinking about clicking off because you just want to see the Chelsea-Manchester City coverage, stick around. We've got the post show. We're going to be talking about how Arsenal blew away Burnley and Mikel Arteta's little joke with the reporter. We're going to be talking about that Kieran Trippier video with the fans and my sort of take. Was it good? Was it bad? Was it a little bit embarrassing? I'm going to slightly touch on the Wolves-Tottenham game, but I've got a bigger video for that coming. And we're going to talk about the Liverpool-Brentford result, which saw them become joint second in the Premier League. So lots to talk about. First, let's quickly get out of the way the Wolves-Tottenham game. I've got a big video coming for this game, or for mainly Wolves and the job that Gary O'Neill is doing. But just to give my 2 cents, an excellent win for Wolves at home versus Tottenham. They're becoming a sort of giant killer in the league, with a win against Man City, now with a win against Tottenham. They play excellent football, really interesting football that I've really enjoyed breaking down. And with those 2 late goals, Ange Ball is beginning to crumble. I don't think it's quite time to panic for Spurs fans. We're not going to be reactionary or, everything's going wrong for Spurs, because I don't think it is. They played good football. They're a handful, and they've still got that Postecoglou identity, even with so many players out. But it is just showing that, Spurs aren't quite ready, to become the team that we were all sort of looking at them and sort of hoping that they weren't, and that powerhouse. The beginning of the season, it looked like they might have somehow turn into this powerhouse overnight under the management of Ange. But they're not there yet, and they still have a lot of improvement and a lot of a lot of things needs to go their way in order for them to challenge for a league, which a lot of people were already putting them in the race for, which I think this sort of result just proves that they're not quite there yet. And on the other side of North London, Arsenal got back to winning ways. They had a great win in midweek in the Champions League and another win, obviously, in the Premier League. A 3-1 win versus Vincent Kompany's Burnley, who is still holding the award for worst outfits of any manager in the league. But one thing I did want to talk about, obviously, Arsenal performed well, but Arteta's little post-match sort of banter, I guess you can call it, with I think it might have been a BBC reporter sort of just saying, I have the quote here, "You have to ask me about VAR. Put it everywhere like you did with the other one. The referee was top. VAR was top." So obviously a little joke there from Mikel. But a little jab at the media. Just sort of clearly you've seen the reaction from his post-match interview last weekend versus Newcastle. Maybe wasn't happy with the amount of coverage that it got, and wanted the world to know that when he does agree with the referees, which is very easy to agree with the referees when you pick up a fairly easy 3 points, that he wants that to be known that he agrees with the referees for at least this week. I thought that was quite funny, but it's good. We want to see managers show their personality and be able to have the banter with the fans and the media, because having political and sort of press proof media training answers is a bit boring. So I enjoyed that from Mikel. And continuing on from the sort of not being media trained, we had Kieran Trippier having a row with the Newcastle fans after they lost 2-0 versus Bournemouth. Well, first of all, let's quickly touch on Bournemouth. We need to give them their flowers and the performance that they put in versus Newcastle. Newcastle, of course, do have a lot of injuries at this time of the season. They're missing a lot of star players, but they're still a handful. Eddie Howe has them playing intense football, and Bournemouth were able to deal with them fairly well, limit their opportunities, and Iraola sort of giving himself a bit of time. He was coming under the spotlight a little bit. A lot of the footballing hipsters were sort of touting them to be the giant killers, because their manager had that reputation in Spain, and touting them to do a lot better than we all thought. And was the Gary O'Neill sacking the correct thing in the end, and was this Spanish geezer going to rock up and show everyone how it's done? And it didn't quite happen like that. They've had a really tough start to the season, but I think they've picked up 2 wins in their last 3, a vital 6 points over the last couple of weeks, and a big one versus Newcastle. That's a big scalp to get, and keeps them just above the relegation zone, and then want to keep that momentum heading after the international break. But obviously Newcastle, losing against Bournemouth, losing in the Champions League, it isn't looking great for Newcastle, which sounds strange and over the top, because they got that brilliant win versus Arsenal, but they're incredibly inconsistent at the minute, and that's just down to the injuries. You can't continuously play the football that you want when such key components of those systems are missing. And it was sort of brought to light versus Bournemouth. Dominic Solanke picking up a brace, and at full time, obviously Newcastle are going to be disappointed. Their fans are going to be slightly angry. It's a long trip all the way down from Newcastle, although maybe hopefully they got like a hotel or something. They don't have to fucking go. I think the game finished at like 7 o'clock, so hopefully they weren't traveling all the way back up. Book a Premier Inn, lads. Settle in. Have some room service. Calm the emotions. Clearly not, because the fans sort of attracted the attention of Kieran Trippier, and from what I can deduce, it's a difficult video to sort of work out what exactly is being said, but what we can sort of see is that the fans are sort of calling into question the effort of the Newcastle players and whether or not they're giving everything, and naturally that's going to have quite, that's going to hit hard, when you're talking to Kieran Trippier, one of the talisman, well, one of the captains of Newcastle, when he's calling into question the effort of his players, his teammates. Clearly he's going to bite back and, and back his boys and basically say, look, we've got a lot of injuries, but we're giving everything. And obviously then he was sort of dragged away. Joel Linton, moved him away. Trippier, spoke to the manager and whatnot, clearly a little bit frustrated and whatnot. But actually, I really enjoyed that little interaction, because for me, it's all about, the fans and the players should be able to have an open discussion, and there should be some form of communication, direct communication from fans to players. And obviously you need to be careful, because it can open a bit of a can of worms, when that communication is too open and the fans can express their opinions directly, too often, because fans are very reactive and they don't know everything that's happening at the club and on the pitch and things like that. But there should be an element of communication between fans and players, and even if it is heated and they're shouting and swearing and then maybe saying outrageous things on both ends, I think it's quite refreshing to see that. It reminded me of, some of the stuff we've seen in Italy, where the fans have such a large presence within the club and are able to call out their players when they see something that they don't like. I think it's good. And, with all of the media training and the sort of shit answers, and we've created it for ourselves with the media and the scrutiny that the players are under. It's constantly being criticized and they're under the microscope 24/7 for their actions and their words. So, it's not the players' fault that they have to speak so carefully and act so almost robotic at times, on camera and in interviews. It's not their fault. The media and the fans have sort of created that. But when we do see, the players break out from that and express, clearly a want to do better and a passion for their club, and if that comes out in a little bit of just a heated discussion with the fans, I think that's only a positive thing, as long as it's, kept in contained in certain moments. I think it should happen more often, because fans should have a voice, and it's not sometimes not enough, just chanting and singing and just shouting odd bits during a game. Sometimes you do need a fan to just shout at a player directly, and it might get through to him, or just being able to have that discussion, I think, is an overall a positive thing, and certainly shouldn't be seen anything other than that. Not a spat, not a all tension. I don't think it's anything towards that. It's high emotion from fans and players, which clearly care, and I think overall that is a positive. This one feels like it's gone on really quickly. I do apologize if it has been a quick one, but we're going to finish off with Liverpool versus Brentford. My team, really happy that they could pick up 3 points versus Brentford at home. There was a sort of feeling that with an opportunity to head towards the top of the table with a win, it seemed like it would be such a Liverpool thing to sort of bottle it, and Brentford, who are so strong in their own right, it did feel like it was going to be an incredibly difficult game to get over the line. But with how Liverpool played, regaining some of that intensity, which I think they've lost over the last couple of weeks, with that result versus Luton, the performance in France, they seem to have regained a little bit of the physicality and the intensity in their press, and really didn't allow Brentford to implement their game plan or play out in the way that they wanted to. Obviously, they had their chances, and Mbeumo could have put the game 1-0 up for Brentford if it wasn't for an excellent save from Alisson. But overall, Liverpool, for me, played really well from front to back. Van Dijk is looking excellent once again, going under the radar, I think, for a lot of other fans from other teams. But Van Dijk is a seriously strong centre-back in this league and should not be underestimated. It doesn't sort of fit the narrative that once a player gets an injury, they sort of fall off. I think we sort of forget that he came back from that injury and then almost won the quad. Almost won every trophy there was to win in a season. Didn't quite get there, obviously. Had a poor season last season, but that was due to, a complete lightweight and an aging midfield, and now has stepped up as the captain. An excellent decision, from the higher ups at Liverpool and from the manager to make him a captain. I think, along with leveling up his responsibility, he's leveled up his performances, and seems to be that brick wall that Liverpool had for such a long time when he first came in. So I think he's back to his best. The midfield was much more organised, not always winning the ground jewels. Endo is, I think, underrated because I think everyone is scrutinising everything he does. I think he brings a lot of positives to this Liverpool team. I think the fact that there is just a player whose first thought is defensive action is a positive to have him, in the lineup. But he does just seem to be that little bit slower than everyone else, and his decision making in his defensive actions do seem to be a little behind the sort of, the pace of the game. An underestimated part of his game is his ability to break the lines. He looks quite comfortable on the ball and sort of, can shift the ball left to right, but also has the ability to break the lines and find a midfield player, in space and progress the ball, which I think is certainly, valued at the club. Obviously, moving forward, Salah picking up 2 goals. Running out of things to say about this guy, to be honest with you. He is excellent. He is everything that you should be as a Premier League Hall of Famer to be. It should be in Premier League all-time 11s. A great performance from Mo Salah, coming off the back of actually a couple of poor performances, along with Liverpool. It was certainly seen in Salah's performances, an off couple of games. But scores 2 goals, hopefully back to, his best and regaining that form. And we'll finish on Darwin Núñez. Now, you guys, I don't know what fans you are. You might be Liverpool fans, but you probably aren't. If you are just watching Darwin Núñez highlights, or, his absolute sitters being missed versus Luton Town, I urge you, just once, just watch this Brentford game, or just watch any 90 minutes with Darwin Núñez on the pitch, and you will see the mass improvement in his performances. He came into this league erratic, hot-headed, sort of not one-dimensional because he has a lot to his game, but a very specific player that plays on the last line, plays on the shoulder with excellent movement. But what Klopp has done is turned him into a build-up machine, holding up the ball brilliantly, connecting the midfield to the attack excellently, and still regains that pace and that energy when running with the ball or running in behind. Excellent movement, had the ball in the net twice in the first half, both being ruled out for offside, which just adds to the chaos that is Darwin Núñez scoring a bicycle kick and then it being ruled off for offside. It's the most Darwin Núñez thing that there's ever been. And but just please watch 90 minutes of this guy and you will see that he is not the player that Twitter seems to think he is. He lacks the composure in certain moments to finish off chances, certainly. But in his composure in his all-round game, I think it's rapidly improving. His decision making is improving. When to slip in Salah, who they play brilliantly together. When to hold up the ball and lay it off to a midfielder. Obviously, his movement has been so, brilliant since he's come into the league. And he's gaining that little bit of confidence that I think it's almost, been leveled at Núñez. That like, when he doesn't need to think, he's better. I actually think that it's almost flipped a little bit. The more I see of him is the more time he has on the ball, the more confident he's getting. We see that finish versus Bournemouth in the cup, an excellent finish. He had time to think about that finish, and he did brilliantly against Newcastle. Those 2 goals, he had time to think about those finishes, and he put them away. He released a stinging shot from outside the box, I think, in that first half. And pushed away by the goalkeeper. He had time to think about that. I think it's actually becoming the chances where it's sort of reactionary, where it's not quite going for him. But that's I'm not a manager, and this isn't my words. This is, I've heard this sort of thing from Klopp, but you start to worry when he's doing, the build up and the decision making and being a part of the football game. That's when you start to worry if that isn't clicking. You don't need to worry when you're missing open goals or you're you're snatching at a chance or whatever. That's not when you need to worry, because all of those things will fall into place when he gains his confidence and feels a part of this Liverpool team, and almost just a part of the community and a part of England. It sounds really weird, but just like, he's clearly struggled with the adapting to the culture and the language and all of those things, and that can be reflected in your football and how you perform. I think he's coming into himself. He knows what his role in this team is and how he can confidently affect games, and that will naturally translate into, when the ball does get flashed across to him, he's got an open goal to aim at. Though the confidence that he's gained in the overall aspect of his game will translate in him being able to finish those quick chances when he doesn't have to think about it. But that's the end of the podcast. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I've just got a text that I might need to leave. So an excellent time to finish off the podcast. Please subscribe. Let me know any videos you want to see. I'm hitting the microphone. Ugh. But yeah, we'll end it here. An excellent weekend of football. Still got one more match to go. But from what we've seen this weekend, the Premier League is well and truly the most dramatic and, dare I say it, best league in the world.